Yeah, so before going into the crux of the presentation, I would like to share 2 or 3 sentences about my institute. So we represent the Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology. Many of you must be knowing the institute. It is very small, only 17 years of age, and we are having a deemed to be university status, and we are under the Department of Space. And we have a unique mandate of undertaking teaching and research in areas that directly impact and support the space endeavors, especially for our country. So in that context, we are an academic institute as well, offering BTech, MTech, PhD, and postdoctoral programs in areas that are closely related to space technology, space science, and space applications. So moving further, now this is about today's lecture. So at the outset, let me tell you that the contents of this particular lecture has been kept as simple as possible so that every passionate space enthusiast and the budding space researcher who are attending this session will be able to travel along with me. Okay, so in the lecture, we'll be starting with the unique features of a space laboratory and the challenges when it comes to the human space flights. Okay, so then there are areas which the country needs to build capacity upon. Those are the space biology and the bioastronautics domains. I will talk about what these 2 domains are telling you about. And then to prepare ourselves to meet the future requirements of our space programs, we have to be ready with some of the knowledge related to the microgravity research and the outcomes and why and how we can perform these experiments. So with introducing to you some of the microgravity research platforms available within the country, I will also touch upon the prospects and opportunities for learning and research in these upcoming domains in our country. So the first question is a very, very unique question, and many of us have already asked, or maybe we are trying to answer the particular question, why we go to space. Yes. So the thing is, we already know that space is a very harsh guy, right? Despite this harshness, we want to go to space. So what is the reason for that? The simple basic reason is to unveil the secrets of the universe. We want to know what is in there. So in that pursuit of understanding our pursuit of understanding the secrets, we actually are expanding our knowledge. Okay, so once we try to break certain boundaries and go beyond, we are trying to expand our knowledge and in that journey, we knowingly or unknowingly inspire a lot of the next generation of academicians, even artists, engineers, scholars, scientists, thinkers, whoever coming in the way, we are able to inspire them. And during this process of exploring the space, we also make groundbreaking discoveries and which help us to bring the benefits back to humanity, back to society. And in that route, we also create a lot of new opportunities. So by now, we should be now convinced enough that why we go to space is actually a thing that we want to do and we should do so that we can actually contribute back to the society in all possible ways. So this is one slide. I think everyone in this particular forum will be actually mostly proud and happy when we hear this term Gaganyaan. So it happens that we are the lucky among the citizens of the country who are living this time to see this great missions happening from Indian soil. So Gaganyaan happens to be the India's first human space mission, where the project envisages the demonstration of the capability to undertake human space flight by the country's space research organization, Indian Space Research Organization, or ISRO, what we call it as. And we are demonstrating our ability to launch Indian astronauts from Indian soil on Indian launch vehicles, and then taking them to a low Earth orbit, what we call as LEO, of around 400 kilometers away, and on a 3 days mission. And once the mission is complete, bringing them back safely to Earth and landing them in Indian sea waters. So everywhere it is Indian, Indian, Indian. That means that the technologies, the readiness, everything has to be well handled within the country. Of course, we are learning from many others, but in the long run, we have to develop capabilities. So when we talk about capabilities, we are really proud that ISRO has made every Indian citizen proud by establishing or by building its capabilities in several sectors, including space transportation, satellite systems, or space applications, and so on. But when it comes to this human space missions, we are now evolving new domains, what we call as human-centric domains. So current focus of ISRO, a large group of its scientists, engineers, is to develop expertise and capability on these what we call as human-centric domains, where the whole organization and all the partners are trying to build upon human-rated platforms, including human-rated launch vehicles, then life support systems to support crew on orbit or crew in the space laboratories. And for that, training facilities like astronaut training facilities, who has already established under HSFC, we have an astronaut training and research facility in Bangalore. So these are all the domains which are further looked upon by ISRO for people to take up the challenges and support in its missions. So apart from that, in missions like Gaganyaan, where human subjects are involved, there will be a lot of missions that are preceding. For example, at least 2 developmental flights. Actually, it is now more in numbers. So we will conduct experimental flights to assess the performance of the flight, so that whether any alterations or whether any changes need to be built into the system to bring the humans safely back onto Earth. That is the primary objective. So along with these missions, what we, the scientists or the academicians or the researchers get is a host of opportunities to conduct space science and space technology development experiments. So I'll be talking about some of the opportunities that are coming up as and when we proceed with the presentation. So before that, we already know that our space is a harsh guide, right? So definitely life into space is going to face a lot of challenges. So there are conditions like extreme physical and environmental conditions, radiation conditions, microgravity conditions of space flight. So for example, lower gravity levels, what we call as the microgravity, in space as well as on celestial bodies, we'll be knowing that moon is having one sixth of the gravitational force, that other celestial bodies are having less and less. So typically we will have all these impacts will be brought upon like harmful impacts on humans and as well as other living organisms that are taken to space. So to precisely tell a few of them, the variation in acceleration forces when the launch is happening, when it is staying in orbit and coming back, as well as the confinement when it comes to long duration missions and isolation in similar cases, the microgravity conditions in orbit and the radiation exposure, all these are actually very, very challenging conditions for the life which we take from Earth to space. So they all take their tolls when this human space or the life into space experiments are happening. And apart from that, when we are in space, we are away from our own mama, right? Mama Earth. Our Earth is, we are away from Earth. So it happens that we are no more having food, water, or even air. And unless otherwise you carry them in sufficient quantities, you will not be able to survive in space. And carrying them and replenishing these resources are again a very costly affair. So we have to have regenerative, sustainable systems in space. That is yet another big challenge that the country is going to face in the coming days. So when it comes to human body, initially we face a lot of challenges, small effects like space motion sickness is something, then headaches and congestion due to this shift in the body fluids because of the lack of gravity, as well as lower back pain and the adaptation problems with microgravity. So we face a lot of challenges when life is taken into space. So if we know that we are going to space and we need to keep ourselves healthy in space, understanding the challenges is the first step. Okay. So as I told, many of the challenges are already listed. So here the 5 things that is we are seeing in box on your left hand side, which is marked A. It talks about 5 very specific health hazards in space, which is listed by NASA. It includes space radiation. Then, of course, altered gravity effects, the closed environments, which are mostly hostile, and of course, the distance from the Earth, which actually causes a lot of troubles when it comes to the healthcare for our crew members, as well as delays in communication, as well as the isolation and confinement, which will actually make a lot of impact on your circadian rhythms, your behavioral impacts, your team dynamics. All these things are very, very important risks or hazards that we have to consider. Apart from that, when you look into the right-hand box where I have listed few so-called individual factors. So we know that we have a list of risks associated, and apart from this risk which is already there, we are introducing individuals into these human missions where they have their own lifestyle, their own microbiome, their own genetics and epigenetics. The age will be different, the sex will be different. So on combining these two things, what we call as the human system risks and the individual factors contributing to these particular challenges, we have a term called space exposome. So typically it is a unifying framework which talks about the interaction of all the environmental impacts on the human body combined with the individual factors. So exclusively the space exposome is going to define whether the human system or the space travel is going to be a successful one. So these are things which are individual centric as well, along with all the available changes or all the available environment in the space which are to be faced by the human body. Then comes one more slide which talks about the biological features of space flight. So essentially, the right-hand side box talks about the space risks that we have covered, including distance, confinement, the hostile environment, gravity conditions, and radiation. And you will be finding some of the links to certain articles, research articles, which will give you further more details about these particular experiments in detail. This is actually conducted by NASA. And on the left-hand side, what is shown as two sets of experiments, because most of the time we will be conducting analogous experiments on Earth in order to find how certain organisms or certain bodies will respond in space. So on the green shaded portion, what you see is what you call as the Earth analog experiments, where we will be using, say, humans or maybe plants or non-human animals or even cell cultures to understand the impact of, say, radiation or microgravity or confinement conditions on Earth. Okay, so similarly, you will have also experiments conducted on so-called space laboratories. I'll come to some of the space laboratories available within the globe at this point of time and what is going to come up. So on the left-hand side, this radiation or this space-related research also takes the similar subjects for the studies. Okay, so once we get the data on these two sets of experiments, you can actually analyze the result. And with respect to the sample or the subject on Earth, how come the in-space sample is different? So collating that information and data, you will be able to bring up or build certain, the fundamental knowledge related to space flight. And using this knowledge, both fundamental and applied, you can actually thrive, or you can actually propel what you call as the space flight biology research. So essentially, spaceflight biology research is one among the areas which are coming up in the country, which we need to build a lot of workforce to support our country's missions like Gaganyaan and further missions, including humans. So we will be looking towards Indian astronauts flying frequently, so that we need personalized medical therapies for these astronauts, as well as the countermeasures for most of the hazards that we have already noted. And one more thing, the risks and health consequences of these particular missions are also dependent upon the duration of the mission, as well as the age, the sex, and the genetics, and all these of the subjects who are traveling. So when our country is taking up the missions, irrespective of what data is available on similar studies done from other countries, we need to build our own database. Then only we can sustain our program. So many of the programs or many of the research that we may feel that it is getting repeated, it is not actually a repetition, because we have altogether a different subject which we are sending from our own soil. So that brings the difference in that particular research. Then I told about research in space laboratories. So we call them as space stations. In fact, they are one among the beautiful features of the space exploration. So you know about Mir and the International Space Station, the one which has been the longest inhabited by humans so far. Almost 25 years of human existence has been there. So typically, now we have wonderful news again from our Indian Space Research Organization that the country is actually setting up its own space station. We call it as Bharatiya Antariksh Station, BAS. So the mission or the completion of this particular space station is announced for 2035, and the first module will be flying by 2028 if things are working fine. So there is again a lot of excitement. So two things today I'm focusing on. One is our human space programs, and the second thing is about the Bharatiya Antariksh Station. So both of them requires a lot of research on microgravity, okay, under microgravity conditions. So this is a very common slide, or you all will be knowing about it, because we all, the life forms on Earth for the past 4.2 billion years have been thriving on this ubiquitous pull, what we call as gravity. And among the four fundamental forces, this gravitational force is by strength, relative strength, it is the weakest. But it operates among all objects in the universe, and thus it becomes one of the prominent forces, even though it is the weakest of the four categories. You can see a quote from Stephen Hawking here given. So the large scale of this universe structure, even it is actually formulated or governed by this force of gravity. So since we now know that this gravity is that particular variable, which has a lot of impact on the scientific processes, if we remove that particular element, then we can understand the fundamentals of many processes that are going on, especially in living objects. So typically that brings us the since space is giving you that unique opportunity to lift out this gravity and bring up this microgravity, space becomes one of the important microgravity research platforms. So moving further, again, this is about gravity only. This is everything, most of the things listed here you already know. So we experience acceleration due to gravity of 9.8 meters per second squared, and the distance is something which governs this force of gravity. And in space, we are having what you call as microgravity. And when it comes to microgravity, we are putting actually it is a free fall. That means that the object will be experiencing weightlessness. So typically the term microgravity is used synonymously with zero gravity or weightlessness also. So we are trying to understand how this microgravity is going to impact the life processes, the biological processes. So as I mentioned, now we are in a new era for in space research. A lot of activities are going on, and futuristic programs are going on. Bharatiya Antariksh Station will be coming up, and then Gaganyaan flights, a host of them will be coming up. So what is that the whole country is excited about? Of course, the missions will happen and there will be a lot of science coming back. But for each individual, each researcher, each student, we get a host of opportunities to conduct the microgravity experiments, specifically this bioscience experiments. So why excited about bioscience experiments? Of course, understanding the fundamental processes in biology actually will bring a lot of benefits for subjects on Earth as well. For example, in the case of biomedical research or finding new therapeutics, this all knowledge is going to build or actually compile and give you a lot of new information, and acquired knowledge base, database can be built not only to sustain the life in space, it will also help to sustain the life on Earth. So now you may, some of you will be having the question, how will I know that such an opportunity is coming up or not? So ISRO has built a beautiful system where its website will announce what we call as AO call. It is announcement of opportunity call, where periodically you will see such opportunities for all the Indian researchers, which will be posted on its website. So please do keep a watch. So mostly you may get opportunities like pre-flight opportunities, which are preceding some major flights. Similarly, developmental flights, like for Gaganyaan, we have multiple developmental flights. So I have to caution you or warn you here that when we are trying to build biological experiments to suit the microgravity or the space laboratories, there is a huge challenge associated with that. The challenge is that on ground, I can simply add a solution to another. I simply just pour it out. But in microgravity, I have a lot of restrictions when I need to deal with the samples under microgravity conditions. So especially when it comes to biological experiments, a lot of extra care has to be taken. because the samples are already under the stress of microgravity, and the shocks during this launch and the re-entry, all those things are going to affect the science outcome from your experiment. So what I wanted to tell is that when you are planning for a space flight experiment using biological samples, that is life on board, you have to be very, very, very clear about the hardware requirements. Okay, so the first step is when you design the experiment, you have to talk to an engineer who will be telling you about the specific requirements when the experiment has to be taken to space laboratories. So hardware is going to be the critical requirement and criticality when it comes to life science experiments on board space platforms. So in this context, I wanted to introduce two topics which are not very, very what to say, popular in our country at this period of time, but it is going to become very popular, and it is going to actually lead the future programs of our country, space programs of the country, especially with human space humans on board. So the two domains are space biology and bioastronautics. So this slide actually talks about what we call as space biology. So essentially, when we talk about when we are looking for a sort of I would say a definition for space biology, broadly we can put it as the study of biological and biomedical processes in space using live specimens as experimental subjects. So when I call live specimens, how can we call a specimen as live and all? You must have different definitions for that. But as of now, several specimens including human body, plants, food materials, and even habitat building has been tested in various conditions of space. And when it comes to the life sciences, especially the 100-kilometer or your Van Allen belt and all may not be the definition. So what we call is a physiological space. So physiological space is something beyond which a living object will not be able to sustain or survive on its own without any artificial supporting system. So especially around say 12 or 13 kilometers even, you find the starting of a physiological space. So it actually differs from species to species. And the point that I want to convey here is that when you are taking life to space laboratory, you have to understand a few points listed here as bullet points. One is the space is actually deprived of what you call as the directional stimulus. We don't have any sedimentation process happening there. The density-driven convection is not happening in space. Mechanical diffusion is prevented. The normal convections are not there. It is actually dominated by what you call as Marangoni convections. So all these processes has their own impact on the biological experiments according to the objectives that you are keeping. So what is the knowledge that currently we are having? So early years, even before our country gained independence, people have tried this life experiments in space. So initially there were balloon experiments and all. If you trace the early years of space flight using live samples, we will find that a lot of experiments have been conducted. Okay, so from those experiments, what did we learn? We learned that the living organisms are able to survive space flight. So the early years, the question was only that one, whether the living organisms will be capable of surviving space flight. Yes, later a period of time, it was confirmed that they are able to survive. And the knowledge that we gained also helped us to understand the conditions of impact of microgravity or cosmic radiation, as well as the rigors of what I said earlier, launch of re-entry, all how this is going to impact our life specimens. So those are all were the initial years and preliminary data accumulation. But currently, with that information already available, the focus has been shifted towards the changes in biology happening at cellular and molecular level, which is occurring during and after spaceflight. So in fact, when our country is starting to have this space flight science experiments, we are essentially contributing to this continuum of space flight science, which is already there. So we have to be more cautious and more proactive in designing experiments and contributing to this particular branch of science so that we stand out as unique researchers in this domain. So then For this matter, there was deliberations which happened at ISRO headquarters related to formulation of space biology vision plan and all. And in fact, I was fortunate enough to be part of those deliberations. So essentially, the space biology vision for the country. Currently, we are in the first years, so say 1 to 3 years. So we have to be ready with, say, some of the experiments and facility establishments, to talking about the ground-based analog experiments, flight opportunities, designing of hardware and all, so that from small biological systems at the cellular level, like microbes, plants, animal models and all, we have to build increasingly complex systems so that we understand this developmental biology, or develop microfluidic platforms, or build animal models for drug screening, so that in the longer run, when the human explorations for our country is to be taken in a sustained form, you have to have regenerative life support systems, which will be actually a closed loop system with bioregenerative life support, which will actually support the long-term survival in space. So this is our core aim, is to have a program where the research and development will lead to technologies that will support our humans to travel to space safely and to be productive there with whatever missions that they are interested. They can do it efficiently and then come back to Earth and have a pleasant life here on Earth later. And as I mentioned here, this particular aspect is coming again and again. The critical component for any such experiment is going to be the hardware, specified or customized hardware for the experiment. And once you are ready with your some experiment, you can actually plan it in at least three different ways. Like what you know is a human in loop experiment. That is what is already ongoing in our ISS and similar space stations. Then humanoid in loop, you can use robots to control or to intervene in your experiments. That is humanoid in loop, as well as completely autonomous experiments where the experiment will be completed on its own and you can bring back the payload and analyze it for further. So, as I mentioned, along with this space biosciences emergence in the country, a host of opportunities. So this particular slide, I wanted, in case there are academicians or researchers in their early stages, of course, this 1 and 2 is the places where you can focus upon, because in the first few years, we will be locating the ground-based analogs or platforms to conduct microgravity research on Earth, laboratories, and of course the spaceflight opportunities that will be coming along with the announcement of opportunities. So you can actually identify people who are working in similar domains and set up research teams. So mostly there will be space biology proposals also coming up from ISRO side, or maybe through Respond Basket and all in the coming days. So a lot of initial years, the struggles will be more. So we need to keep us motivated along with the awareness about the challenges. And of course, the awareness about the opportunities. So that is the first phase, maybe 1 to 3 years. We are now almost, maybe we started and we are still there in the first phase only. And next is to have academic programs tailored for training the next generation biologists, especially the space biologists. So along that route, we'll be also developing labs and infrastructure, and outreach programs and public interface will be talking more about microgravity life science experiment. Essentially, that is the reason why the START program is also having one among a few of lectures which are towards this domain. So, and in the third phase, actually, we have to focus upon the spin-offs. So whatever is coming as a bonus from such experiment, they are the one which are making space programs very unique. And when you consider the human space programs of other countries, almost 3,500 plus experiments related to biomedical and biological experiments have led to what you call a spin-offs. A lot of products have come and they are all helping in various societal applications. So, and apart from that, we have to enhance partnership with external agents, internal within the country definitely, and external partnerships are also very important, because knowledge is something which can which need to be shared. Okay, then only it will multiply and more people will benefit. So industrial partners will come up, and a lot of startups will also get opportunities in these domains. So in the fourth segment, we will be having supporting the Bharati Antariksh Station, and from their own words, we will be having decadal plans to be ready for the next longer duration missions. So the second domain that I was talking about is what we call as the bioastronautics. It is specifically a newer term to our Indian researchers. So there's a unique combination which we never thought about in early days, because the biologists were considered as separate entity, engineers separate, medical separate, space science altogether separate. So now every such domain has to come together and shake hands.
30 minutes over.
Okay, so I'll actually rush up a bit more. So here we have maybe 5 or 10 minutes more, and I will just try to tell you about this significance of these topics. So typically, our aim is to use the technology and engineering principles to facilitate healthy human inhabitation. So here, a very, very important challenge is to deal with the man-machine interactions under varying gravity conditions. So several challenges, health, medical risks are listed over here. Among that, microgravity is one very important thing. You can see many diseases like kidney stone, osteoporosis, muscle atrophy, or this bone mineral demineralization. All the things happen when we are having prolonged exposure of our body in microgravity. Other than that, earlier I have mentioned a few. Here also space radiation is there, isolation and sensory deprivation, this intoxication due to this artificial environment, microbial infections can happen, and unpredictable accidents, including sometimes loss of life can happen. So typically bioastronautics is actually the study and support of human or life in space. Okay, so here the aim is to protect astronaut during long flights and after long flights, to provide sufficient resources like food, water, medicine, air, and all. And along with that, the issues of gravitational biology also need to be addressed. So here, remember, the duration of the flight matters. Short duration flights need not impart this much of problems in humans, but they do have their own significant impact, but not too much. But the isolation from Earth and the distance from Earth all will actually have a say on how much problems the astronaut is facing. So I've talked about a lot of challenges. It is not to scare you, but it was rather in order to do that. Along the challenges all the time, we see multitude of opportunities as well. The first and the foremost is actually the microgravity environment, the unique environment. So experiments that are impossible to perform on Earth, you can conduct it on microgravity environments on board the space flights or satellites, or even some platforms are available. I'll talk about that. And of course, the commercial flight opportunities are of course increasing, but how affordable they are, daily research is possible. Actually, it is a tough question to answer, but I would say that we have to look for alternatives. So one of the alternatives is to use the ground-based simulation of microgravity or partial gravity conditions. How do I start? So that typically talks about from where you can start your research. Essentially, for this particular set of experiments, the ground-based facilities for simulation of micro or partial gravity conditions or even hypergravity conditions are being utilized. Why should we use them? Because they are going to define, or they are going to help you to define certain baselines, and they become valuable tools for you to prepare spaceflight experiments. And many a times they give you very important information and help you to address the gravity related issues that can be actually known prior to the real space flight. So the list of ground-based facilities are listed over here. Clinostats 2D, 3D, random positioning machine. On the middle, we are having this microgravity, this random positioning machine. And then we are having rotating wall vessel. Then you can go for diamagnetic levitation. For biological samples, it is a tough thing to subject it to such levitations, but it is done in some experiments. And there are ballistic trajectory, what we call as parabolic flights. So essentially, the parabolic flights will give you around, say, 20 seconds of microgravity, and various drop tower facilities. And this is the drop tower facility. Middle left, you find this drop tower facility as Bremen, Germany. Whereas in India, we do have a unique drop tower facility at IIT Madras. So you can actually explore their website and see. Other than that, sounding rockets are also one among the opportunity where you can conduct research. So these are again platforms where you can conduct microgravity research on your samples. So satellites offer one sort of microgravity platform, POEM platform, we'll talk about in the next slide. Then we have scientific balloons. TAFR Hyderabad is having a scientific ballooning facility. And in our IIST also, we do have a scientific ballooning facility with a range of, say, 38 kilometers. So some of the experiments are being done on scientific ballooning as well. Then we will talk about the fourth stage of PSLV, our rocket. We call it as a POEM platform. That is again another opportunity to conduct your experiment. And of course, we are having sounding rockets. You see, this is the sounding rocket launch from the Tumba Equatorial Rocket Launching Station, the one among the very prominent rocket launching stations in the globe itself. So a lot of experiments you can plan. Yeah, this is one thing I wanted. Most of you will be knowing this platform because recently in the SpaceX mission we had around, say, 20-24 payloads which were flown on POEM 4. So especially we can, this is actually a PSLV orbital experiment module. That is what is POEM. So in space is actually authorized. I mean, it's taking care of the announcement of opportunities for hosting payloads on POEM. Please keep a watch on InSpace website. So you can plan your own experiments, the microgravity experiments using biological samples or technology demonstration in whatever way you want. You can design experiments. The capabilities of POEM platform also will be available in website. I have given a glimpse of them. So the very recent experiment, it is the CROPS, the Compact Research Module for Orbit Plant Studies. So you can see the germination of seeds. The two-leaf stage is being photographed here. It fetched a lot of attention from the scientific community as well as media within the country. So this is one example for a space biology experiment. But we will be talking about experiments that can come back to Earth as well. So what to say, retrievable payloads, we call them as. So once you conduct such experiments, why do you want to conduct? Of course, it is to optimize the ground and pre-flight experiments, which will be a good starting point for space biology experiments. So please try to use this opportunity. And research in orbit, of course, we are talking about everything indigenous, but if you see the backdrop of this particular module in the International Space Station, you see how complex it is to conduct experiments, especially biology experiments. So we need to have international collaborations. So along these lines, ISRO is currently collaborating with the NASA for conducting one Axiom 4 mission. So it will be taking our own trained astronaut, as well as some of the payloads from within the country to launch to ISS, and some science experiments are being planned. So other than that, this is two examples I wanted where my group is working on development of certain payloads for two missions. One is the Gaganyaan mission. So you can see on the left, this is my small team. So Chitra, who is moderating this program, is also found in this photograph. So we are working for developing a payload using Drosophila melanogaster, the simplest, actually very useful genetic organisms, Drosophila melanogaster. So this assembly of payload for this simple experiment is what is given in this chart. Just to tell you that it is several sub-assemblies go into the making of a special spaceflight hardware. So we do have collaborators from the agriculture universities as well. And the second payload again is with seeds. We are performing some experiments where the food crop seeds will be taken to International Space Station with the support from, again, Agricultural University of Kerala. So we will be having some 6 varieties of seeds, and our own astronauts will be trained in conducting experiments on board space. Several science objectives are also there. I'm not touching that part. So in summary, what I wanted to tell you is that lots of challenges are ahead. So we have to keep ourselves motivated. Okay, so what should motivate us? Motivations actually comes from the innovations that actually drives this particular programs, and are spin-offs from these programs, which will definitely benefit humans in space as well as on Earth. So we are looking towards disruptive innovations, disruptive technologies, and high impact scientific studies and technologies from these programs. A lot of research has contributed, has come from space and benefited on Earth. A host of them from NASA's website I have taken. And to give you an update, ISRO has transferred currently over 400 technologies to around 235 industries, out of which the major contributions came up till now from the chemicals and special materials. So once the human space programs and the Bharat Antariksha Station launches, you will find that the biomedical sector is going to actually lead with a lot of benefits coming from the space programs. So we are all eagerly looking towards that. Okay, so as you all will agree, we are really proud about the Antarikshme Atmanirbharta made by ISRO, right? So are you eager to contribute and support to the space missions of the country? That is the question that I wanted to ask you. And I wish that let this start 2025 be the start of your space journey. So if you are ready to start your space journey, there are a lot of opportunities there for research, for learning, everything. I have listed a few of them. Of course, IIST, ISRO, and in Institute of Aerospace Medicine, we in India can support you in a lot of programs or areas of research. A few areas of research which are going to be very dominant in the coming days to support the program is also listed over there. So bionic science and engineering, bioregenerative life support system. You will find that any domain or any discipline you are in, you can actually tune you as one among the space researcher, space science researcher, space life science researcher, bioastronautics researcher, if you are willing to do so. Okay, so with that, let me actually tell you one more thing. This is a very important quote which is dear to my heart, which was by our first Chancellor, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. That is, small aim is a crime, have a great aim. So as Indians, as strong supporters of Indian space program, definitely I think all of you who are passionately attending this program is very eager to contribute to this particular domain, space domain, bioastronautics, space biology, and other space sciences and technology domain. With that, I think it is time to say a word of gratitude. Of course, start 2025 organizing team for this wonderful opportunity. My institute, IIST, and our parent organization, ISRO, for all this support. Of course, my students and collaborators, they keep on working and giving more and more challenges and questions. Okay. And finally, every one of you who have attended this session, a big thanks to all of you. I hope you have grasped something from this small lecture. And in case if you are really interested to know more about our research or any queries, in case if you don't find time to answer most of them, you may please send an email to srija@iist.ac.in. And you can also visit our website at the particular website is given. So with that, let me thank you once again. And yeah, thank you all.